In the sweltering heat of 737, iron-shod boots strike the ancient Roman paving of the Via Domitia. The Battle of the River Berre, 737, an engagement defined by a ruthless scorched earth policy in Septimania, ignites under a southern sun. Charles Martel does not come to negotiate. He comes to dismantle the Umayyad presence through mechanical force. This clash on the coastal lagoons will neutralize the enemy field army for a generation. What happens next will prove that a total victory on the battlefield does not always mean the fall of the city. How does a regional base like Narbonne become the catalyst for a total Frankish invasion? From the early 720s, Muslim forces from al-Andalus have held a firm foothold in southern Gaul, using the fortified city as a launchpad for deep incursions. Sunlight glints off the saltwater lagoons as Arab raiding parties push into the Rhône valley, threatening the very stability of the Frankish domains. Martel initially views this expansion with caution rather than alarm. However, the sudden occupation of Arles changes the strategic calculus entirely, forcing a move toward the Mediterranean coast. Why does a local nobleman like Maurontius decide to invite Umayyad troops into the heart of Provence? This act of defiance provides Charles Martel with the perfect justification to march south and assert his tightening grip over Burgundy and Marseille. The air in the Rhône valley is thick with the scent of dust and pine as the Frankish host moves with focused, singular intent. Martel recognizes that the security of his borders depends on the total removal of foreign garrisons from the south. He prepares his men for a campaign that will push far beyond defensive lines. Could the capture of Avignon be the key that unlocks the entire southern corridor? Charles and his brother Childebrand lead their veterans down the river, storming the city walls and clearing the path into the Narbonne. The sound of splintering timber and the clash of iron echo through the narrow streets as the Frankish grip tightens on the region. This victory transforms the conflict from a border skirmish into a full-scale offensive into enemy territory. With Avignon secured, the Frankish army turns its eyes toward the primary Umayyad base at Narbonne. Charles Martel does not rely on religious fervor. He relies on the cold application of power and the loyalty of his rewarded warriors. His hand grips a heavy iron mace as he surveys the rugged terrain of Septimania, a land of marshes and narrow coastal corridors. Martel's presence on the battlefield is the stabilizing force that prevents the Frankish infantry from fracturing under pressure. He is not a crusader, but a political realist who understands that land and plunder are the true currencies of medieval warfare. He orders the march to continue into the Gothic heartland. How does Martel gain the vital intelligence needed to intercept a sea-borne relief force before it can land? As his men lay siege to Narbonne, scouts bring word of a massive Umayyad army approaching by sea from al-Andalus under the warlord Omar ibn Khalid. The Frankish commanders study maps of the coastal lagoons, searching for the perfect pinch point to catch the enemy off guard. Martel realizes that if this relief force reaches the city, the siege will surely fail. He must act quickly to divide his forces and strike the newcomers first. Why is the ancient trade route known as the Heraclean Lane the most dangerous terrain for an approaching army? This narrow passage between the lagoons and the sea is guarded by the ruined limestone walls of the oppidum of Pech-Maho. The geography here is a trap of water and silt, where the Berre River meets the marshy flats of the Mediterranean coast. Martel identifies this bottleneck as the ideal place to anchor his flanks and negate the maneuverability of the Umayyad cavalry. He moves his elite units into position, blocking the road to the interior. Does the Roman Via Domitia provide the speed necessary for the Franks to execute a sudden, overwhelming strike? The heavy infantry moves with surprising discipline along the ancient road, their gear rattling in the salt-heavy air as they reach the valley of the Berre. Martel orders the immediate construction of a fortified encampment on the north bank, overlooking the river crossing. The men work in silence, digging trenches and raising palisades to secure their position before the enemy arrives. This logistical preparation ensures that the Franks hold the high ground and the initiative. Can the massive siege lines around Narbonne hold while the main army moves to confront the relief force? Martel leaves a significant detachment to maintain the blockade of the city, even as he leads the rest of his veterans toward the coast. Enormous ramparts of earth and timber rise along the Audi River, designed to trap the Arab commander Yusuf inside the walls. Despite these efforts, the city remains supplied by sea, its stone fortifications appearing nearly impregnable to traditional assault. The success of the entire campaign now rests on the coming battle. The white sails of the Umayyad fleet appear on the horizon just as the Frankish lines lock their shields on the north bank. This is the moment the Battle of the River Berre 737 moves from a tactical maneuver to an irreversible collision of empires. Martel's intelligence has been perfect, placing his men exactly where the marshes of the Étang de l'Estagnol provide an unbreakable anchor for his flank. The promise of a decisive encounter is about to be fulfilled as the relief army begins its march inland. The Umayyads have no choice but to fight. How do the Frankish infantry lines respond when the first wave of Umayyad warriors charges across the shallow river? The sound of the collision is not metal on metal, but the dull thud of wood and bone as the shield wall absorbs the impact. Martel has arrayed his men in deep, well-ordered ranks, using the terrain to compress the enemy into a narrow, killing zone. The water of the Berre turns murky with the churn of thousands of feet as the two forces lock in a desperate struggle. The discipline of the Franks becomes their greatest weapon. Is the Frankish infantry truly the threshing machine, described by the chroniclers as they begin their steady, grinding advance? A heavy spearhead drives through a leather breastplate with mechanical precision, clearing a path for the warriors behind it. The line does not break, nor does it falter, even as the Umayyad light cavalry attempts to find a gap in the formation. Martel personally leads the counterattack, striking at the enemy camp from a position of strength. The sheer weight of the Frankish push begins to buckle the center of the relief army. Why does the death of the Umayyad commander, Omar ibn Khalid, cause such an immediate and total collapse of the relief force? As the warlord falls in the heat of the riverbank, the surviving Moors realize that their leadership has been severed and their escape route is closing. Panic spreads through the ranks like a physical contagion, turning an organized defense into a desperate scramble for survival. The Frankish line senses the shift and surges forward, increasing the pressure on the fleeing soldiers. This loss of command marks the transition from battle to a slaughter. Do the shallow, stagnant waters of the coastal lagoons offer any hope of escape for the retreating soldiers? The surviving Moors flee toward their boats, but the terrain that Martel chose now becomes their greatest enemy. Frankish horsemen pursue them into the marshy shallows, their dark mounts splashing through the reeds as they cut down those trapped in the silt. Many of the survivors drown in the floodplains, unable to reach the safety of the ships waiting in the deeper water. The marshes are filled with the discarded spoils of a defeated army. The Franks do not celebrate their victory with rest. They immediately execute a brutal scorched earth policy in Septimania to ensure the region can no longer support a garrison. Black smoke rises from the burning walls of Nimes and Agde as Martel's men dismantle the fortifications that once held the frontier. This is a deliberate act of strategic destruction, designed to leave the Umayyads with nothing but ruins to reclaim. Martel understands that if he cannot hold the cities, he must ensure no one else can. The landscape itself is scarred by this transition. Why does Narbonne remain a defiant island of resistance despite the total annihilation of the relief army? The city's grey stone walls remain shut and silent, defended by a loyal garrison that continues to receive supplies from the sea. Martel recognizes that a prolonged siege of such a well-fortified position would drain his resources and leave his northern domains vulnerable to rebellion. Even though he has won the field, the city itself remains beyond his grasp for now. He makes the difficult decision to withdraw his main force and head back toward the Rhône. Could the immense plunder taken during the Battle of the River Berre 737 be the true motivation for Martel's warriors? Piles of looted silver, fine arms, and thousands of captured horses are gathered in the Frankish camp, fulfilling the expectations of the men who followed him south. These spoils are essential for maintaining the loyalty of the Frankish nobility, who have been granted church lands in exchange for their military service. The wealth of Septimania is stripped bare as the army prepares to march. This plunder serves as both a reward and a warning. How does the destruction of the fortifications at Béziers and Arles alter the long-term balance of power in southern Gaul? By tearing down the walls and burning the suburbs, Martel ensures that the Umayyads lack the infrastructure necessary to launch another major offensive into the Rhône corridor. The scars in the landscape where these defenses once stood serve as a permanent reminder of Frankish strength. This policy of devastation creates a buffer zone of ruins that effectively isolates Narbonne from its allies in al-Andalus. The strategic geography of the south has been fundamentally reset. Does the uniform silence of the Frankish chronicles regarding the failure to take Narbonne reveal a hidden truth about the campaign? While the victory at the river is celebrated with great fanfare, the reality of the city's endurance is glossed over by later writers. A lone rider looks back at the abandoned coast, seeing the smoke of burning towns, but the flags of the enemy still flying over the primary prize. Martel has achieved his military goals of neutralizing the field army, yet the ultimate conquest of Septimania will fall to his successors. The Battle of the River Berre 737 is the definitive moment when the Frankish hammer breaks the momentum of the Umayyad expansion in the west. Through a combination of superior intelligence and the ruthless application of a scorched earth policy, Charles Martel secures the southern frontier for a generation. He has proven that the Frankish infantry can dismantle any force sent against it in the open field. Charles Martel returns north to confront fresh rebellions in Saxony and Aquitaine, his authority now unchallenged across the Frankish heartlands. This strategic neutralization of Septimania ensures the Umayyad Caliphate never again threatens the Rhône corridor, securing the borders for the future Carolingian Empire. Which turning point in the medieval world should we explore next? If this deep dive into the campaigns of the Hammer helped you understand the birth of Europe, scan the QR code on screen to subscribe and continue the series.